Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Mess. So today we're continuing the series, the Unported Playlist Hall of Fame, where I take a look at some of my favorite unported arcade games of all time, reaching back into the channel's archives to talk about games I haven't talked about in years now that we have a bigger audience. And one of the first games I put on the second part of the Hall of Fame, because we did this series last year as well, was Lucky and Wild. Not just because I recently purchased an arcade board for this and did a video on it, but because it is one of my favorite sprite scaling games of all time, and it has a bonus feature. It's also a light gun game as well. Before we get too far involved, though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But Lucky and Wild is Namco just having a good time. It's an arcade racing game a la Chase HQ, and you get some of the best 2D sprite scaling I think that's ever been put to an arcade game by Namco or any other company. But additionally, in this cabinet, you're also going to have a cabinet-mounted light gun, which is actually an XY coordinate gun that I'll get into in just a moment. But what other game lets you drive through a mall's window, try to avoid kiosks, all while having a gunfight while racing a car at the same time? This game is just balls-to-the-wall spectacle from the time you hit start to the time you see the credits scroll, and that makes me so incredibly happy. And it is a fun instance of an arcade maker marrying two genres together. You have a pedal, you have a brake, and you have a full steering wheel. You also have that cabinet-mounted light gun that you can move around and shoot in real time. You can play this game in one of two ways: as a one-player game, driving with one hand and then controlling the light gun with the other, or you can play this as a two-player experience in which one person's driving the car and trying to avoid obstacles while the second player is shooting the enemy at the same time. And this is my preferred way to play as a two-player game, but for the capture I'm doing everything all at once. Trust me when I say, if you have a game night or if you have a friend that likes games, load up Lucky and Wild, figure out the control scheme, and play it as a two-player game. It is absolutely hilarious, amazing, and everything in between. Although I will say that when you actually get the arrest bonus, you get to go to the garage, and I'm not sure who at Namco is into cats, but you'll see here, all of the women that fix the car up have a very cat theme going on, including ears and tails. So honestly, someone at Namco, very big into cats. But as we move on to the second stage again, this is just what I love so much about this game. I love sprite scalers, I love Chase HQ, I love stuff like Outrunners, but I also love arcade light gun games if you don't know that from watching my channel. So putting these two things together just makes a great experience, and honestly, I can't really think of any other game that put these together at the same time. Sure, there's light gun games in which you're in a vehicle, but that vehicle's always on rails and you're just going along for the ride. Where here in Lucky and Wild, you control the car the entire way, and you'll see that you're getting Molotov cocktails, barrels, and grenades thrown at you the entire time. You can shoot them out of the air, but the easier thing to do is to try to drive around them. And I love that it even slows down here into this little alley shootout. This definitely feels like in some way, shape, or form the precursor to a game like Point Blank, which I think is probably the best arcade light gun series ever made. I have all of the games on PlayStation 1 with GunCon, and I love them all equally. And I feel like Lucky and Wild is kind of how you get to Point Blank. A lot of the gangsters here, a lot of the sprite work, just so much remind me of that series. I wouldn't even be surprised if somewhere in the background Dr. Dan and Dr. Don were hiding. I know that's not true, but that's the vibe I get. And as we go through these bushes here and across a pond doing some car pond skimming, this game is just so pretty to look at, and it gets even prettier towards the end of the game, which is unique because usually arcade games load their best levels up front. But even this boss battle here against this truck, all of these barrels flying at you and scaling in real time, the pseudo 3D effect in Lucky and Wild looks better than pretty much any other arcade game from that era. But you can feel free to disagree with me in the comments down below, and I'm sure a lot of you will, but you're all nice about it, and I actually love kind of debating those things down in the comments. But I will say this game's going to get progressively harder as you go on. You will let some bad guys get away, but I even love these little interstitial titles between levels giving you some story setup. And it's a Namco arcade game, and Namco always had great soundtracks, and because this kind of plays like a buddy cop movie come to life, you're definitely going to hear a lot of the inspiration on the different television shows and films it uses for the music. So go ahead and listen, and I'll be right back with some more Lucky and Wild.
Continue.
That's just some solid music, and you add in the chaos of all of the different screeching tires, the gunshots, all of the explosions, and you just have a soundscape which drives that chaos home. Because every single second you're playing this game, you're focusing on something. You need to keep the car relatively on the road, you need to drive around and avoid all of the different projectiles and cars coming your way. At the same time, if you're doing a one-player game, you have to manage your aiming. Once you get good at this game, it feels like second nature, but honestly, it takes a minute to get good at it, and that's why I do recommend try this first with a two-player experience. It's just going to be that much better. You will see that the first time in the capture, the bad guy got away. You do have a timer, and if you're not doing perfectly, they are definitely going to get away. But as we move on to the next stage, again, I just love everything this game does. It kind of feels like something like a Lethal Weapon game come to life without the actual license behind that, or a brighter, less dramatic Miami Vice. Back in the day, in the 80s and early 90s, the buddy cop genre was a huge thing, and some of the best action movies from that era are the buddy cop genre. So having it here in an arcade game just 100% makes sense, and it is such a fun time. But you'll see there as I take another continue, this game can get very difficult as it goes on. But I just love how this looks as well. I love sprite scaling, I love great 2D art, and Namco here just had such a unique look. Whether it's this, Steel Gunner or Steel Gunner 2, Point Blank, their sprite work and their kind of cartoonish but still lifelike art style really just helps this game age so well. And this tunnel here, obviously not being true 3D, still sells the illusion of being in 3D. This is one of the best games when it comes to actually thinking. If I didn't know any better and I didn't know what sprite scaling was, I may actually think that this was some form of 3D. And as I get to this boss fight here, I love that there's all of these cars on the trailer. You can either try to shoot them down or you can avoid them. And that's where that racing, driving, and light gun shooting mechanic all at once comes into play. And I think it is a great marriage of two different genres. Everyone knows how to play an arcade racing game. Everyone knows how to play a light gun game. So by putting those two things together in Lucky and Wild, you just end up basically creating a new genre, even if it's predicated on using two genres that everyone knows so intimately. And I think that's a very good design decision because it allows people to immediately understand what they're supposed to do, even if they've never seen it before. But these boss battles towards the end can get quite difficult. I almost had the boss, but I blew up at the same time, and your timer does run out until you take that continue, which feels like maybe 10%, slightly unfair. And as we come into this level here, just look at that building on the left. That looks like 3D polygons in motion. It is just sprites, and they're laid up in a way to really make it seem like it is 3D, and they only use that sparingly probably because it was a high test effect on the CPU and the actual display hardware, but it just looks so damn good, and that's what I really take away from this game. It's incredibly pretty, it's incredibly fun, it's incredibly addicting, and it's something new and fresh and unique. But one more soundtrack taste because it gets even better. 30 seconds and I'll be right back. I just love the soundtrack and the voice lines. As we go into the final level here, obviously this is Las Vegas. I just love these explosion effects. This casino is getting absolutely decimated, and for some strange reason it seems like Lucky and Wild just run down the cops and their own barricades. I think it's supposed to be just a little bit of an effect that didn't work perfectly, but I always notice that it seems that they run down their own team. But again, this is just a classic game, and it's one that I feel like not many people know about. I did buy that original arcade PCB, and I can't recommend that nobody do it enough. Trying to wire up controls on that thing and get it working without an arcade cabinet has proven to be one of the most difficult things I can do from an ergonomic standpoint, and I'm still not 100% there in a way in which I find the game to be perfectly playable. But honestly, however you play Lucky and Wild, the only way to do it incorrectly is to not play it in the first place. This is classic Namco arcade sprite scaling goodness. It's an arcade racing game, it's an arcade light gun game, and it is just a charming as hell game, and it's got some of the best sprite scaling I've ever seen in an arcade game, both stylistically as well as the illusion of being true 3D. This is every bit as good as anything Sega or Taito could do back in the sprite scaling days, and it is just a fun game. So definitely check it out. In this last boss battle here, I love that we finally stopped driving and we actually get to have a stationary battle for the first time. Lucky and Wild's definitely a rare arcade game, and if you know where there's an arcade cabinet, leave me a comment down below because I would be curious, and tell me, have you ever played this game? Did you know about it before the video? And if so, are you planning on playing it after you watch this? But Lucky and Wild, a 10 out of 10? Hell, I'll give it an 11 out of 10. It is one of my favorite arcade games of all time. For that, I'll have more Hall of Fame next week, and I'll have a video of the week, but we are done. We're going to drive up here and send the bad guy to the maker in the sky, or whatever else you believe. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.